Good morning, Infinity. Good morning, Infinity. Good morning, Infinity. To everyone who is in the place, but most importantly, our Infinite Life streamers in this moment who are joining us from around the globe. We are excited that you are with us today in this moment. We're so grateful that you're joining us. I'm Jeff Obafemi Carr, also known as Rev Jeff, in the space of Infinity Fellowship. And we're so glad that you decided to stop by today on this awesome third Sunday. It's If Teaches Sunday. That means that our message is Q&A, that our energy is about embracing spiritual tools that grow you, practical spiritual tools. So as we open the portal today to spirit, which is simply the acknowledgement of the awareness of the divine, we invite you, gather your family, get your friends. In a minute, you can send the text. But right now, since you're with us presently, we invite you just to take a deep inhale and then release it into the atmosphere. No urges withheld, no judgment of body functions, just breathing, focusing on that breathing. Inhale and exhale. Continuing to breathe something like this, not trying to coerce, not trying to force, not trying to control the breath, but just be mindful. Mindful of the inhale. And if you feel so, pausing it, breath gently at the top. And then gently releasing the exhale. Allowing yourself to fall into a pattern of the conscious awareness of the breath, inhaling slowly until you're completely full. Pausing gently at the top. Exhaling until completely empty. Closing your eyes from top to bottom if you have already not done so. Continuing just that cycle of breathing in to fullness. Pausing for a beat or two to hold that full feeling. Then exhaling to empty. As we are inhaling and exhaling in this manner, being mindful of the places in your body where you may have held some stress. Are your shoulders and neck tight? Are your face tight? Are your thighs tight? Are your feet tight? Are your toes crinkled up in your shoes? Just scan your body gently on an inhale. And where you feel tension, just let it go on the exhale. Always embracing this space of stillness, knowing that it is always accessible to you, knowing that at any point, with everything that swirls around you, with every distraction that is available to your ears and your other four senses, that you have the ability to pause and just breathe. Finding, claiming, and appreciating the center. It is from this space of focus and release and allowance that we invite all heads to bow and all hearts to open as we now direct our consciousness toward the God of your acceptance and understanding, focusing on the peace that passes all understanding, focusing on the love that emanates from a universe that is surrounding you and conspiring to do good in everything, focusing on the knowledge that good and orderly direction guides us all. All wise and all knowing, all living, loving creator, Father God, Mother God, divine source of all creation, we acknowledge your presence in this place today and we give thanks. Thank you for the awareness that you are very much present in our lives, that there is no separation, that we are divine reflections, cosmic reflections of you, reflecting itself all over the globe. And that through this awareness, we recognize the beauty in one another as we recognize the beauty in ourselves. We give thanks from a space of gratitude and awareness of the things that are working for our good today. And from this space of awareness, we speak and proclaim this good over all who are covered under the sound of my voice right now. And so we thank you for the infinite life stream, for the technology that allows us to reach people all over the globe and just simply remind them on Sunday morning that everything is going to be all right. We thank you for the cosmic awareness of our music today and our voices that are lifted out into the atmosphere today, and the musicians that have contributed to the vibration of love that goes out across these broadcast airwaves today. Thank you for the person who thought that they stumbled onto this infinite life stream. We know that you guided them here for healing. And as we have been healing this entire month through Mental Health Awareness Month, we give thanks today that the universe is working in our favor for providing us with an informed, an educated, a powerful, and most importantly, spiritually connected teacher, Dr. Michelle Stevens. And we speak affirmation of the good over her life, that it is good that she is so busy. It is good that she is called upon to be places. It is good that she is a triple mom and multiple hundreds, thousands of moms with the students that she encounters on a daily basis in the past, in the present, and in the future. And we know that it is good that she is a resource for the healing of this world, that all the things that are emerging from her will continue to generation upon generation affect people in a positive way. And so we speak that something is said or shared in today's service that will keep everyone covered. We know that it is good that family stands with family during this time. And we send this energy to the Smith family and Brother Joshua's grandmother in her transition from the space of life to the space of life after life. And it is good that the other ancestral grandmothers and grandfathers are in a position to carry her into that space of Amentet, of Olorun, of heaven, to be with those who have come before. We send our energy of good to the family, the Sullivan family in Murfreesboro. And young Asher, who made his transition at 10 years old, caught in the storm drain 2 weeks ago. And many people have prayed for his spirit. We speak that there's an affirmation that his spirit is where it desires to be right now. And this community will continue to show up in profound love, in profound support, and in profound memory of the preciousness of life. And so we are grateful to be a community that can send that energy in that space. To those who are graduating, it is good that safe travels are covering everyone who are traveling all over this country. For people who are walking across the stage, dancing across the stage, not getting family put out of celebrations because they're dancing so much. But we speak alignment for everyone, from colleges down to universities, down to middle schools, and down to graduate schools and beyond. That all is covered in celebration, that this education can enlighten us and lift us, and that we can continue to heal the world, bring it even more into this new age of enlightenment, even through the rough spots. So for these things and others that we cannot put into words, we simply breathe in gratitude. Inhale, pause gently at the top, and exhale. We proclaim these things as such, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Hotep, Shalom, Namaste, Ashe. It is done, and so it is. Let us prep for our pouring of libations. As we welcome everybody in Infinity today, we think about our ancestors, those who have come before. We have the opportunity to pour aloud to them. When we pour this water, we recognize that water represents the living, and we pour into the earth at our altar. It represents what happens to these earth suits when we no longer need them, when we have shed them and gone into the space beyond the veil of life after life. We recognize this when we pour libations. And as we pour these libations, we invite you at home to remember your people. Think about your folks, those who've come before, the grandmothers, grandfathers, aunties, dads, moms, everybody, uncles, brothers, cousins, even the people in the neighborhood that may have poured something great into your life. We want to remember them as we pour this water out today. And as we pour, we use the Yoruba word ashe, which is a blessing. It is also a proclamation of, and so it is. It is also a remembrance that we have the ability to speak things into order. And most importantly, it is the divine essence of all that we are, also sometimes translated as breath. This gift of animation we do not take lightly. But when we pour out this water, we connect ourselves with those who have gone before and recognize that we stand on their powerful shoulders. And so it is. And so we pour today and we say, cool water, bless this spirit of house today. Ashe. Freshen and consecrate this space for spiritual work. Ashe. Freshen our collective ancestors all together. Ashe. We give praise to Almighty Mother, Father God, Divine Source, and all creation. Ashe. Grant to us peace and prosperity. Ashe. We pour in the cardinal directions, the first one being, of course, the north, which represents being a yes today. Whatever was in your spirit that may have been contradictory, you showed up. And because you showed up, that means you're a yes. Be a yes in the world, Ashe. To the energy of the south, the recognition of who you are and whose you are, that you're divinely connected and protected at all times, Ashe. To the energy of the east, and that is, of course, where the sun rises. Last night, I don't care what happened, the sun rose on a brand new day. So don't carry yesterday with you into the right now. Ashe. To the west, knowing that even as the sun goes down on the western horizon, we are gifted with the moon and the stars, knowing that even as the darkness comes, there's always light somewhere. Ashe. The Lakota people add three more directions to this: the ground below, recognizing that as we drop our roots, then just like the tree that bends with the storm, we are not uprooted, because it is better sometimes to bend than it is to break. Ashe. Of course, to the sky above us, a wonderful blank landscape, where, as Langston Hughes said, our minds are allowed to wonder as we wander. And so we get to see our dreams and bring them into manifest reality from there. Ashe. And finally, that seventh direction, Grand Central Station, where all of the paths intersect, the human heart, symbolically the place of Anjali in the yogic tradition, the understanding of the lightness of the feather, that green energy of recognizing that all things are at peace and everything is working for our good. Ashe. So we invite you in this place to call aloud the names of your ancestors. Speak them aloud, mutter them aloud, whisper them aloud, type them aloud in the chat box if you hear somebody that you want to remember as we pour these next few pours of water. Of course, for Sister Marie Smith, Ashe. We pour that energy for the entire Smith clan, going back generation upon generation. Of course, to the family and the energy personified in a person whose birthday, earthly birthday, is to celebrate it today. The energy of Brother El Haj Malik El Shabazz, also known as Brother Malcolm X, Ashe. And so at this time, go ahead and call aloud the name of your ancestors as we pour these next few pours of water for you. Haywood H. Carr, Thomas and Gussie Hayes, Della Mae Carr, Queen Mother Catherine Carr, Queen Mother Zuli Ursary, Queen Mother Bernice Bronson, Queen Mother Melba Sewell, Queen Mother Dorothy Smith, all those who have passed before in the Hayes clan, Horace Marion Frazier, Eloise Frazier, Rosamond Perry, Uncle Bill, Harris. Cousin Tina. I see you. Cousins on Carr. And everyone who's a part. And for the children in the womb, in the world, and yet unborn, we say together, Ashe, 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 oh, it is done, and so it is. We're going to ask Lady Kenitha to come up for our statement of infinity. Absolutely, so we can let people know how and why we're here. Looking awesome today, by the way. Yes, everybody's so professional.
Yes, well, good morning. Greetings. I am Lady Kenitha Carr, and I'm pleased to welcome you to the Infinity Fellowship. So we pause to remind you of the 4 core principles of our gathering, and guess what? We call it SNAP. The S in SNAP is for spirituality that transcends religion and connects you to the God of your own understanding. The N in SNAP is for nurturing of ourselves and others, mind, body, and spirit. The A is for action, because we take action on our callings and walk in our divine purpose every day. And finally, y'all, this is the important part. The P is for the proof that our spiritual practices manifest fruit in our lives through the building and maintaining of healthy and prosperous families, relationships, careers, and dreams. We are so grateful that you are here as a unique manifestation of our Creator, the loving, living Spirit of our commonality, the divine source of all creation, perceived by many names, yet known by only one energy. This is the foundational practice of true interspirituality, where all are affirmed in love energy. So I invite you all at home and in our space to stand with me and join me in our statement of infinitude. We agree that we are beings of pure, eternal spirit, birthed from the creative potential of the universe, with all the powers of the Creator inherent within us. We embrace the innate goodness of humankind and an abundant creation that provides for us through the seeds that we plant in our everyday lives. We acknowledge that who we are is housed in a temporary biological organism, and as such, it is our responsibility to take care of it, because it will only last for a precious window of time. As we nurture ourselves spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, we commit to provide like acts of nurturing for our fellow brothers and sisters of the world we live in, embracing all regardless of religious faith, skin color, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or socioeconomic background. All are truly welcome at infinity. We agree and accept that various religions exist as a unique opportunity for humanity to get to know one another through meaningful conversations that seek to explore the core concepts we share in common. It is the application of ancient wisdom, scientific discovery, and spiritual practices, both physical and metaphysical, that will lead us closer together as a human family. We commit to exist now and ever as a beloved community. Let it be so according to the many ancient terms of affirmation. Amen. Amen. Hotep. Shalom. Namaste. Ashe.
All right, as we are in the place today, what a wonderful moment to be able to generate some celebration of gratitude and to make sure that we are celebrating in gratitude. How are you doing today, Lady Kenitha? You're doing much swell, especially for someone who's getting ready to have a high school graduate. It's got awesome, isn't it?
It's awesome.
I love it too. It's awesome. I love to celebrate it myself. That'll be 3 out, 2 to go.
No,
we're on the opposite sides. So we're like, yeah, we on We're going to get it in there. But this is what we celebrate gratitude for. So listen, we're going to generate gratitude in the chat today. So we want you to type in something that you're grateful for. I'm also going to put a link in the chat early for standing ovations. So down the line, if you got a standing ovation today to share, those of you who've been in Infinity, you know that's something that is manifest as a result of your spiritual practice. We want to celebrate for you. Go ahead and click on that link that'll go into the chat as we're singing, and we will celebrate it with you after announcements for standing ovations. But for right now, we want to let you know that we celebrate with you by saying good morning. And we're saying good morning and we're singing good morning. And we want you to join with us by singing wherever you are. Get your friends together, generate them, and say, we're going to sing good morning, and type one thing in the chat that you're grateful for. Where you're from, your name, and one thing that you're grateful for so we can share this energy. All right? Come on. Here's the song. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. And we say da 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 da. Good morning to you. 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 Say da 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 da. Hey, good morning to you. 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 To all of you. Good morning.
Yeah. We almost had our guest speaker jump on up here, sing with us. His golden voice is on fleek. Voices of Infinity. We're gonna get that going in here. You are welcome to the space today. And Tony, if you can give me the chat window, if I can see a couple of chat folks in there, I'm just going to say hello to everybody in there and see what they're interested in today in terms of gratitude. Good to see you, Shirley. And there we go. Everything that you see on the right side of the screen right now, that's what we're grateful for. So I'm glad to have you all in the space of gratitude. And we'll just keep it like that for right now, T. We'll keep it like that and go to the slide because it's time to welcome our visitors for the first time. We want to say good morning, Infinity, and welcome to Infinity. As you see on the right-hand side, there are a lot of people who are grateful for a lot of things, and it's scrolling on the right-hand side. There's also a slide on your screen right now that has a QR code. And that QR code is for you to hold your phone up to, especially if you are a first timer at Infinity. If you're a second timer, third or fourth timer, and you hadn't scanned the QR code, then go ahead and scan that QR code now. Because what this does is it gives us a little bit of information on you, gives us an opportunity to reach out. We'll send you a card and welcome you to the Infinity Fellowship. And when you do show up in person, we have monthly services in person. We'd love to give a gift to you and let you know that we appreciate you and we see you. We'll also put a link in the chat, and that link will have the same click on capabilities as the QR code. All you got to do is click on it. Even if you click on it after service today, make sure at some point in the service that you click on that code, because it gives us a way to welcome you in a very powerful way. Again, if you're new to Infinity or you just tuned in, my name is Jeff Obafemi Carr. I go by Rev Jeff in this sacred space. And it's this point in the service that we do say hello in our special way to our first-time visitors and welcome you to Infinity Fellowship. So if you're a first-timer, we welcome you. Click on or write in the box first time, or just say, it's my first time, something like that. Whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on X, whether you're on Facebook 1 or 2, wherever you are, go ahead and just say first time, and everybody on the Infinite Life Stream is just going to pile on love on you. They're going to hit high fives and hearts and all that wonderful stuff that we do at Infinity to let you know that we're grateful for you today. So first timers, go ahead and say hello. And in the meantime, know this may be your first time at Infinity, but we get the opportunity to stand and let you know that we see who you are. You're not just a human being who showed up to have a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. You're a spirit navigating the human experience just like the rest of us. And so we have a special way that we say hello and welcome to you. And it's basically the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. And this is what we do. So if you're a first timer, come on and just hold your hands up to the screen. If you're in the space, hold your hands over to each other. Take a deep breath. Exhale and release. Yes, that's awesome. Listen, you could tell a friend, call your kids in the room and say, I got something to say. Trust me and see how you feel after this. All right, we ready? Deep breath in. Exhale, release. Repeat after me. I see you, but you don't hear me though. I really see the real you. I see who you are. You are a divine manifestation of God's creation. I see what you are. You are a spirit. You're more than what's on the outside. You're a gift to me and to the entire world. I see where you are. You're right here in front of me, where I can let you know, if nobody else will, that you are not alone. I'm with you and you are at home. I see when you are. You're in the right now, baby. You are so much more than your yesterday. I see why you are. You're here to learn, to grow, to embrace your dreams, and to celebrate your divine destiny. I know all this because I'm here to do the same thing. So we're going to help each other out. All right? I know the real you. And I see you shining today. I feel you shining today. I know you're shining today. So welcome to Infinity. Welcome home. I say, oh, hey, get the slide in. Give some time right now. Text somebody. Tell them how awesome it is right now in here. Tell them how good you feel in here. In the Infinite Life Stream, tag somebody on Facebook and tell them how awesome you feel. Go ahead and share that love today. People from all over the globe just gave you that love. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow, what a way to have some sacred energy in the place today. That greeting never gets old. It just never gets old. And to experience that in the space is something wonderful. And, you know, we're grateful for those who have assembled here to help us with our Infinite Life Stream today. And we're grateful for you Infinite Life Streamers. If this is your first time again, we're so glad to have you here. We're eternally grateful. And we're looking forward to seeing you on our next gathering, the first Sunday in June as you are able. People come to Infinity from Georgia, Mississippi, Kentucky, Indiana, from all over the place. And we're just grateful to have you with us today. We're so grateful. It is time now for us to carry that sacred energy that we have of gratitude into our sacred moment of action, where we affirm the powerful frequency of giving in this space. It is an awesome space to give in, and we can give through Cash App, we can give through PayPal, or we can even give through the mail. This is important. This is a part of spiritual practice, y'all. And listen, we don't start with gratitude. We don't start with our statement of infinitude and then jump to the message and then get on out of here and think that that's going to sustain us. This is the part where individually, all of us get to participate in the service. But beyond the service, it's where we participate in life and living as spiritual practice. What giving is, what giving's not. Giving's not a payment for services, because I would have to bling out in all kind of clothes to just say, and preach, I got to get a great sermon, and then you pay for that. That's a performance. That's not giving. That's not giving. It's not transactional. It's not, oh my gosh, if they make me feel good, then I'm going to give in this particular place right now, and then I'm just going to go to wherever I can extract. No. It is about a spiritual practice that affirms that you trust that all your needs are met. Do you trust that all your needs are met? Okay. Then you're communicating a message of recognition and gratitude. And that message of recognition and gratitude is affirmed through what we do with what we call energy. And energy, in this case, for sustaining this community and growing it, is money. All right. And when I say that, you check the inner self. If you hear the word money and you're like, okay, that means that you don't have a great relationship with money. I'm so sorry you don't. When you find that you have a great relationship with money, money will have a great relationship with you. And you see it as a tool, whether that's to advance the cause of humanity, whether it's to feed your family, whether it's to live your dreams and travel, whatever it may be, those things are good. And for those of us who are putting good into the world, we have adopted the spiritual practice of giving because it is a vibrational frequency. Do you want to be in a relationship with somebody who's a giver or somebody who's a taker? Well, guess what? You attract what you are, not what you want. So in this moment, we're about to be in our space of giving at a high vibrational frequency. So take a deep breath here, prepare yourself, put your device out that you're giving with, whatever that may be. And now we have options. You have device. Device may be a cell phone or a checkbook, whatever it may be. You've got options, and we'll put them on the screen. But take a deep breath here with me and release. We are affirming this space of good, limitless and abundant creator. We are so grateful. And so as we speak together this affirmation, I speak a covering over those who give, those who tithe, those who feel moved in this moment to celebrate this essence of thanksgiving that you provide for us. And as we speak together our offertory affirmation that is on the screen now. O limitless, abundant creator, source of everything I possess, you have given me the gifts of life, breath, and creativity. You continue to provide for me without judgment or preference. And so I freely return these gifts to you with my whole heart, mind, and intention, knowing that as I give freely with both remembrance and gratitude, the circle of abundance will be unbroken. And so it is. Everybody at home, say it with me and in the place. Everything is good.
Everything is good.
Everything is good.
Everything is good.
I got it good.
Everything is good.
Yeah.
Everything is good. Yeah. Everything is good. Everything is good. And I've got it. I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Hey, yeah. Everything is good. Yeah. Everything is good. Yes, it is. Everything is good. Oh, everything is good. And I've got it. I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Hey, everything is good. Yes, it is. I said everything is so good. Everything is Tell yourself everything is good. Yeah, everything is good. Yes, it is. I said everything. Hey, I've got it. Woo! I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Hey, everything. Yes, it is. I said everything is good. Yeah, everything is good. And I've got it. I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Go ahead and remind yourself everything is good. Yes, it is. Everything is good. Yeah, everything is good. Yeah, everything is good. And I've got it. I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Oh, I've got it good. I've got it. Hey, I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Come on and say it again. I've got it. Hey, I've got it. Oh, I've got it good. Oh, I've got it good. Yeah. Woo.
Ooh, that felt good. Oh, that felt good. I even heard a third voice coming in here. I said, oh, the voices of infinity are coming back in this place. Oh, we're so grateful. What a wonderful day. What a wonderful way to get. Oh, I just love it. I love it. I love it. It's the giving spirit. It's the giving energy. Y'all listen. Let's get this up. Let's get these numbers going. Infinite Life streamers. Let's share this energy with people. We are close to the meat of our spiritual assembly today. And that is a wonderful conversation around mental health. The faces of ACEs and adverse childhood experiences. Listen, this is the time right now as we're getting ready to give a few announcements first. Tag somebody, call somebody, text somebody who you know needs some assistance or may want to be enlightened around this space of mental health. Tell them to tune in. So I want you to send a text to 5 people, send a tag to 5 people, whatever it may be. We want to make sure that we get as many people as we can in this live space because third Sunday is Q&A. So if you have a question, you can ask it. If you have a comment, you can put that in there. People can hear that and learn from that. We also have disclosures that we are going to share that this is a spiritual assembly and is not to be confused with an actual mental health session. So I don't want y'all going around trying to say that Rev and Dr. Stevens, tried to heal you and it didn't work out. Y'all know that. Rewind it to this moment. We're gonna give you another one. But in terms of general awareness that is important, these are issues that we are tackling head on in spirit, and it's important for us to do that on Sunday and not just during the week. This is the space where people trust, so we're going to open those portals for you today. We want to welcome you to 2024, especially our first-timers, the year of divine reciprocity. That is our theme for the year. One definition of reciprocity is the equal exchange or interchange. So the law of attraction teaches us that what we put into the universe is attracted to us. So we're excited to invite you to empower yourself continually. You do that by speaking aloud our daily mantra for the year under that theme, divine reciprocity. And that mantra is, I am that I am. I give, I get, I've got it good. Let's say that together. I am that I am. I give, I get, I've got it good. All right. If you have a standing ovation, again, we've got the link in the chat. Make sure that you send that in so we can get that covered. But we want to get a couple of announcements through before we get to our standing ovations. We know we'll have some today. Our first Sunday services continue in person. We gather once a month and have a rocking good time in here. We love it when it's standing room only, and it's also standing room only for the kids downstairs. That is the powerful energy of Infinity Fellowship in action. Of course, on second, third, and fourth Sundays, we are still virtual. So we invite you to continue to join us and support us on the Infinite Life stream here. Next week is Yoga Sunday. Yoga Sunday has been about restoration for the last few months. So people can't say, well, Rev brought me in and did that power stuff he used to teach in class, and I couldn't do all those sun salutations. Nope. We've been doing a restorative practice. Next Sunday, it's going to be even more restorative because we are welcoming back Sister Janet Stewart Caldwell. And under our theme this month of mental health awareness, she is going to teach us some basic Sanskrit chants. Chanting that you can add to your meditation practice that will open your flow and tune you in to spirit, mind, and body. So be prepared. Find you a comfortable cushion for the floor. Next week, it's going to be off the chain. Inside the band app, a reminder to everybody who has joined Infinity and gone through our orientation. We have Love and Light, hosted by Terrell and Tashana Lindsley. Sending a shout out of congratulations for them this past week. They celebrated 1 year of hosting Love and Light Wednesday nights. It's conversations about the themes and the topics that you hear on Sundays. It's support, it's fellowship, it's conversation. And those of you who have been in the Love and Light room, it is exactly as it is named. So thank you, Terrell, Tashana. Congratulations on a year of service to Infinity Fellowship and to your own callings. This is how we build community, y'all. It's pouring in, and we are seeing fruit from it. We are continuing in our way of innovation, in our path of innovation this summer with our first annual, first only ever in the world, Vacation Spirit School. What is Vacation Spirit School? Well, you remember Vacation Bible School. We're birthing a new concept into the world, Vacation Spirit School. Save the date. Next week, we will have a link for registration. It is free, but registration is required so we can get a count for you for food and snacks and all of that. It is for all ages. There will be kids and adult classes on world religion, spirituality, holistic health care, and more. There will be campfire and car riding songs from across faith traditions. There will be games, contests, food, and fun. And again, it's free. Registration is required. So it's from 6 to 8 p.m. each one of those nights. Yeah, don't worry. You have to, when you see the date, you're like, I can't do 3 whole days. Well, it's 6 to 8 p.m. It's not 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's 6 to 8 p.m. With that, y'all, it is time for standing ovation.
Tune your vibration to a high elevation. It's time for the good news, our standing ovation.
Yeah. Woo! I love it.
So let me turn my mic. There we go. Our high energy at IF comes from our practice of snap. It's why we snap our fingers during this part of the service. We receive practical lessons and tools for our individual journeys. That's spirituality. We fellowship with fellowship with like-minded individuals.
It's a warm-up.
Y'all, just bear with me. That's nurture. Okay. We take what we learn and apply it in our lives. That's action. And if we do these, then every week we see examples of progress in our lives.
That's
I
the
don't know
proof.
what's going on. That's the proof. So let us pause to enjoy a collective moment of manifestation and expansion. So here's what's going to happen. When your name is called, please stand as I read aloud your manifestation. When I finish each person's ovation, we will snap our fingers to celebrate and affirm them, and then provide a collective standing ovation at the end. So you can do this at home. Y'all go on and stand up. When we say your name,
When you say your name, go on and stand up.
Yes.
So we can
All
get
right.
you. Okay, Mama. So listen, y'all got to get them in because it takes a minute for it to populate on the form. So if we miss you this time, we will definitely send you a shout out.
Yes.
Next Sunday. So you've had the link. So let's go ahead. First and foremost, while we have that going in, I've got to sort through my email because my wonderful family who know that I have a Sunday morning service. Some still send me wonderful prayer moments during the Sunday service. It's wonderful. I'm like, so I have to turn my phone off. We got everything there. We want to send a special shout out to Destiny Muhammad. And this is also a standing ovation from Chriswell Muhammad. who we got the chance to see.
Yes. Oh.
Chriswell Muhammad, go ahead, stand up, Destiny and Chriswell in California, Bay Area. We are grateful for the opportunity to sit down and have dinner with the Carr family. Sister Destiny Muhammad and Chriswell, they called and said, Sister Destiny is coming here for a major conference for jazz composers. And she's like the greatest harpist that you were ever going to know. And she said, I'm going to be in town for just 2 days. Is there a way we could see you? And we had this extremely long day. We were like, we're going to find a way. So we rolled up to West End, found the hotel, and we were able to take Sister Destiny to dinner and meet her in person for the first time. And we just talked and just, Sister Destiny, such a light. Thank you for the privilege of being able to sit down with you in that window. We're very grateful. We FaceTime with Chris Well. All the people in the restaurant was looking at us like, what's wrong with those people? We were like, you can say hello too. We're going to act very, very wonderful, cultural. We're going to be good in this. Shout out to you, Destiny. Shout out to you, Chris Well. We're just so happy to have you in that space today. Okay, next in terms of standing ovation, we got a standing ovation for Talia Lindsley. Stand on up, Talia.
Hi, Talia.
I can see her family now going in. Talia says, I passed my milestones for school, and I am going to the 4th grade.
Oh, God, Yay! Go Talia!
Oh, I love it. Okay, we got them. Those are our online ones. What else do we have? Anything you want to share?
Yes, so again, for Daniel is graduating tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
Our son Daniel, tomorrow.
Our son Daniel. So we'll celebrate him later in the week, but we are just so excited that he is graduating, and not just graduating, he's graduating with honors with an IB diploma as well. So we just want to give him
international baccalaureate. Yes.
Give him a shout out, honey. Yeah.
Shout out to Daniel, and we're very, very proud of you.
We're so proud of you.
You're very, very proud of him. And Daniel also has been doing our tech for a long time. So to the Infinity family, he is commencing forward. We're going to need somebody to commence in. So
Dre.
tech team, Dre, everybody, we're going to have you in here. We'll have you in here. Shout out also to the Hamer and Ridley families who are traveling, who made it safely to New York for Sister Carmen's graduation tomorrow from college. I know everybody's graduating. And to all the graduates we celebrated, thank you. And to the ones who we didn't get the pictures from, but we know we see you and you're out there in the atmosphere, just know that we are covering you. This is a week where it all takes place. By the end of by this time next week, everybody will be out of school or heading toward where their next generation of education is coming from. So we're there for you and we're with it. All right, one more check to see if we have any more standing ovations that came in. And I think we're okay. All right.
All right. So if you shared, go ahead and have several seats while the rest of us are going to stand to our feet and give a thunderous standing ovation. Okay? Here we go. My baby, girl up, Jesus.
Get you in there as we go. Today's meditation, y'all, as we prepare for a wonderful, wonderful conversation that we're having today, we're going to turn your attention to the screen for a quote that'll lead us in. It comes to us from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She says, quote, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep, loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. End quote. Beautiful people do not just happen. Take a deep inhale there. Exhale, go ahead and let it go. As we prepare today for our speaker, who's going to be teaching us some amazing things today, we are dealing this month with mental health, and mental health is about making sure that our mind aligns with our body and our spirit. And this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're serious about that. As you've known for the last 2 Sundays, I've always pointed out that there are some enlightening statistics out there, including a study that concluded that 90% of people who are having a mental health crisis, if they're attached to a spiritual community, they go to their spiritual community for assistance. They go to their spiritual leader, their imam, their pastor, their rabbi, their iya, their babalawo. How about this, though? Out of the 90% that go there, of that core corpus, only 5% of that 90% are equipped to help people who are dealing with a mental health crisis, right? Because we get into spaces where people begin to shift into, we'll just pray over that. Or if you just keep coming, everything's going to work out. But we know that that's not the case. It's just like if you think you want to get in shape and you sit in a chair all day and eat Oreos and say, I'm just going to pray that the Lord going to give me that 6-pack and going to bless me. It's not. You're going to have to get out and you're going to have to do the work, and you're going to have to put yourself in an environment, both diet and exercise wise, that's going to help you grow. So here at Infinity, we're pleased that we've been talking about this month. And most importantly, we've been tapping into people with expertise. And today our expert is one of Infinity's own that we just love to see back in the space, Dr. Michelle Stevens. I'm going to read you a little bit about Dr. Michelle. We could be here the rest of the time reading her bio and her experience, because that's just who she is. But Dr. Michelle Stevens is a professor of educational leadership, and she serves as the director of the Center for Fairness, Justice, and Equity in the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University, right up the street. Prior to her current appointment, Dr. Stevens served as professor in the professional counseling program for 14 years. She was training counselors for 14 years, y'all, and provided supervision for school counseling and clinical mental health counseling students throughout their programs. Scholarly areas of interest include the study and implications of unjust and inequitable practices connected to historical trauma on under-resourced communities, as well as mentoring throughout the pipeline. Prior to joining the clinical mental health faculty at MTSU, Dr. Stevens instructed at Youngstown State University, Cleveland State University, Kent State University, and was a K-12 school-based therapist in Akron, Ohio. Dr. Stevens is a licensed professional counselor and has over 20 years of clinical experience working with clients of all ages who have experienced underlying issues related to trauma. Take another deep breath there. Exhale. This is the awesome sister that we have. So as we prepare for her presentation that'll follow with the Q&A, we want to remind you that we like to sing this song. As we're singing this song right now, I want you to put yourself in the mind state of healing. And I also want you to go grab your journal, go grab a piece of paper, go grab something, because you're going to want to take notes today, and be prepared to interact in the chat as we say, come and go to that land. Come and go to that land. Come and go to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go to that land. Come and go to that land. Come and go to that land where I'm bound. Oh, there is wisdom in that land. There is wisdom in that land. There is wisdom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm There is wisdom in that land. There is wisdom in that land. There is wisdom in that land where I'm bound. Oh, all of my people are in that land. All of my people are in that land. All of my people are in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Said all of my people are in that land. All of my people are in that land. All of my people are in that land where I'm bound. Oh, don't you wanna go to that land? Don't you wanna go to that land? Don't you wanna go to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound? Said, don't you wanna go to that land? Don't you wanna go to that land? Don't you wanna go to that land where I'm bound? Dr. Stevens, we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So she's on the mic. Look, I'm going to turn it over to you. Then I'm going to come back and we're going to sit and talk. But I just want you to know we're grateful to have you here, grab you back in the space. Y'all get ready for this. This is going to change your life. Dr. Michelle Stevens, y'all.
Thank you. It is amazing to be back in this space. The energy, everything is so real, so genuine, and so full. And so I'm so grateful to be here. So grateful. Okay, I'm going to make sure I'm looking at the right camera, Jeff.
Yeah, you can, that one.
That one? All right. All right, let's go. Nope. I'm doing the wrong one. There it is.
Yes.
All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about healing. And I think that that's so important, right? If you think about the things that are happening in the world, you think about all of the things that are happening in your world, it's important for us to focus on healing when we talk about mental health and mental wellness. And so Brother Jeff called me and said, hey, we need to talk about this ACES thing, right? And hopefully a lot of folks have heard of about what ACES are. And we're going to talk about that in some detail. But we're really focusing on not just ACEs. We're not just focusing on trauma, right? It's important because we have to know where in order to get to where we need to go, we have to be able to process some of the things that we've gone through. But we're not stopping there. We're not stopping and being stuck in the trauma. Today, we're talking about healing as well. And so we're really thinking about this healing journey. What are ACEs and how do we embark upon healing? That's really what the conversation is going to be about. So I'm going to go, I'm a professor, so I'll talk and I'll lecture a little bit. I'll lecture a little bit, but really, I do welcome questions even while I'm doing a little bit of a talk. So if anything comes up with you, Jeff, please feel free, okay? All right. There it is. So before we get started, here's what's really important. We are going to be talking about things, we're going to be focusing on things that are not always, they're not pleasant, right? When we talk about trauma, we're talking about things that are founded in pain. And so it's going to be important to know that we are going to be talking about things, we are going to be reflecting upon some things that may have been painful and can bring up uncomfortable feelings. It's important for you to give yourself grace and to know what your limits are, right? Because in order to be safe, in order to make sure that you're okay after we reflect on some things that may have been hard for you, it's important for you to take care of yourself in this space. So if you're feeling that sense of, sometimes it feels like a sense of not being in control, right? Because you're starting to think about like feelings and things that might make you feel powerless. It's important to manifest, right, where you want to be, and really thinking about, I mean, being involved in Infinity, I know it's about staying grounded. And so taking those deep breaths like we did at the beginning of the service is going to be important. Also journaling, and really reflecting, but really thinking about giving yourself grace and knowing those limits is going to be really important. Also, what Reverend Jeff said earlier is this is not a counseling session, right? And it's going to be really important for you to, yeah, that's okay. It's going to be really important for you to think about what resources you need at the end of this. So this is not, can I go back? Okay. Got it.
Yes, there it is. Make sure that everybody at home is seeing these slides.
Awesome. Okay, so we're talking about this is really a content warning, and also thinking about the fact that this is not a counseling session, right? And so, we are going to give a little bit of a couple of resources at the end, and it'll have a couple of links to some ACES tests for you to take, but I really encourage you, if you're taking those tests, to make sure that you are talking with someone and reflecting with someone, hopefully a professional, that can help walk you through those, right? And so I'm sometimes hesitant because what we do with the knowledge that we get from some of those tests are really important.
Okay, so in other words, we're saying, and I'm going to say this in colloquial language,
Yeah.
don't y'all go out and just try to self-diagnose.
Right.
Because we often do that on WebMD and other places like that, and we don't do it and get assistance even.
Exactly.
So when you're doing this and exploring this, make sure that you have access to resources.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there are a couple of resources at the end that will help to connect you to some of that
That's
support.
awesome.
Yeah. I am going the wrong way. There it is. All right, so let's talk about what ACEs are. So ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences, and these are stressful or traumatic childhood experiences, things such as abuse and neglect, and some of those really hard things that a lot of us have probably experienced. It stems from a decade-long study that looked at the impacts of ACEs on adults' mental, physical, and overall health. So this study wasn't necessarily focusing on trauma, which is really interesting.
Wow.
It was actually an obesity study. And so the researchers, they found that most of the participants, an overwhelmingly amount of participants, they had different things, different connections, and they saw these themes and they were like, they're all experiencing trauma at a very young age. And I wonder what the links, what the connection could be to this trauma and them not being able to lose weight.
Wow.
Right. And so it came from that. It wasn't necessarily them studying trauma. They
Right.
found it on accident.
So they actually found it from the actual outcome so that you could
Exactly.
see what the outcome of it. Oh, wow.
And so what happened was they started to see other behaviors, right, that some of the participants were exhibiting. So it wasn't just that they couldn't lose weight or that they were overweight. It was also that they had not a good relationship with food or with other people, or they had some anxiety, mental health. And so they started to see some of the different behaviors that came from the childhood trauma. So that's really where ACEs comes from. What they found was that ACEs changes the neural development and structure of the brain. It literally changes the shape of our brain. It changes the way that we make decisions. I'm not going to go into all of the structure of the brain, but our frontal part of the brain is where our decision making is. So what we know is that trauma, it changes. It's almost like it gets stuck. Our brain gets stuck in certain instances, and so the trauma, if it's at an early childhood experience, right? We're talking about before 18. It impacts our decision making, and if you ever think about someone who feels like, they're stuck. They're like, this is a grown up, but they're making like teenage decisions and behaviors, right? A lot of that has probably implications and connections with trauma. When we think about it, really does stunt the growth in some of the progress developmentally that our brain actually goes through. Now, the great thing is that you're not stuck all the way. That's why it's important, and I'm kind of jumping, but that's why it's important for us to be able to reflect upon what it is that we've experienced, right? So just because you have ACEs doesn't mean that you're doomed, and we'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's great.
It is great, isn't it? Okay, so when we think about ACEs, there are 10 different not necessarily categories. There are 3 categories, but there are 10 different things that the study found. When we talk about the categories, there's abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And so if we're going into the categories, we have physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. And those can be you experiencing those, or you have seen someone in your household experiencing those types of abuse.
Say that again for the people in the back.
Okay.
Because when we look at that slide and I see abuse and I see that coming down there,
Yeah.
a lot of people say, well, I wasn't fit. Nothing happened to me.
Right.
Physically, I was safe.
Right.
But trauma affects people even if they just see it.
Absolutely. Because you're experiencing it in your own way. So if you have experienced it by witnessing someone or just knowing that it's happening, your psychological safety is decreased as well. And so it's not just the physical abuse and the emotional and the sexual abuse of that person, but maybe who's in the household with you. Neglect, when you think about physical and emotional neglect, so have your physical needs not been met in terms of, shelter, clothing, things like that, and then emotional, right? And so one of the things that we know, and we'll talk about just a little bit, is that trauma is passed down from generation to generation. And so if our parents were also experiencing some of these effects of adverse childhood experiences, they may not have been able to emotionally give you what you needed, right? And so that emotional neglect is something that maybe you weren't in a family where you could talk about your feelings, right? Or
Okay.
you could, or you felt loved, right? That type of a neglect is that emotional neglect that we're thinking about. And then when you think about the last category is household dysfunction. So these are things that are happening within the household. Also, it's important to think about collectively, right? Like maybe it's not necessarily just your nuclear household. A lot of us have been raised generationally, right? And so I think it's important to think we're not just talking about in the household, we're talking about within our circle as well. So when you think about folks who are dealing with mental illnesses, having someone who has been incarcerated, seeing your mother or caretaker being treated violently, any kind of substance abuse or use. I know it says abuse, but there's a fine line between having a dysfunctional relationship with substances and then divorce or separation. And so thinking about, how broad and widespread that is, it's really interesting because so many of us have dealt with those things, right?
And when we talk about like divorce or separation, talk about the connections between that and what people consider loss of a parent, either be a death or is. Sometimes we think of things like this in trauma. We think in terms of degrees. Well, it's not as bad as somebody dying, but
Right. But
how does trauma register as a child to a child?
It does. So I was refreshed when I saw the meditation today, because that is the person who talks about the stages of grief. And when you think about loss and grief and loss, it's not necessarily just death. It's a loss of your reality. It's a loss of what could have been. And so if you think about the abrupt, and sometimes it might not be abrupt, right? But if you think about just having your reality just uprooted and upended as a child, it's really hard to understand why that happens and not to blame themselves. But the loss of a person, the loss of a relationship, and the foundational, what's supposed to be the foundational relationship that you have, it is very impactful when it comes to trauma, and can really, we're going to talk about mental wellness and what that looks like. It can really alter the way that someone sees themselves, with their self-worth, all of those things. So some things to think about with ACEs is that ACEs are common. And if you go, let's see if I can do this. If we go back to these pretty broad categories, right? The household dysfunction, you think about someone dealing with mental illness, an incarcerated relative, substance abuse, domestic violence, divorce. Those are very common things. Very, very common. So if you think about 61% of adults have experienced at least one ACE. And that's thinking about in all of those different categories, at least one. That's more than half.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then 17% have experienced at least four. And that is something that, it normalizes it a little bit, I think, for us, because it's like, man, it's not just me, right?
Yeah, that's true.
It's not just me. There's a dose response, and what that means is the more ACEs a person has or has experienced, the higher the likelihood that the person will experience significant physical or mental health issues. And so really, if we think about what they found in that study, what they were saying is that the more ACEs a person experiences, the more severe, quote unquote, severe their behaviors are that lead to physical health issues, mental health issues. So, for instance, if there's someone who has experienced maybe 6 or 7 different childhood adverse experiences, as they're growing up, remember, it changes their decision making, it changes their shape of their brain, all of those things. As they're growing up, some of the behaviors and the decisions that they're making may lead to cancer, right? So if you think about a coping mechanism to stress, could be smoking.
Yeah.
Right? And so those links there, it's something that you wouldn't necessarily think about. But when we think about those behaviors, those are trauma responses. Those are coping mechanisms that we use, right? Maybe someone has, they cope with eating. And that's what the researchers found. People were coping with eating, and as they were really coping, they're coping with this stress, these traumas that they've experienced, right? And so,
which led to the obesity,
right,
which
exactly.
led to the problem.
So, exactly. Yeah. So you think about substance use, that's the same thing with that connection there. Even when we think about unhealthy or unsafe decisions that we make sexually or in relationships, our relationships with ourselves, right? So it's important to think about it as a dose response. The more ACEs that you've experienced, the more likely it is that some of your decisions can be harmful to you.
Wow. Oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is good, y'all. Listen, let me go ahead and just get the head start. Head start, if you have questions that you want to ask in the chat. Again, we're not doing diagnosis, but if you do have questions about this, by all means, type them into the chat so we can get to those. We want to make sure that we have those. So this is great stuff. I know y'all are taking notes, because when I see the chat quiet, I'm like, the people are writing. They're just writing. So if you have something that comes up, we got an expert here, and we're here to share with you. Okay, Doc.
Okay. So another thing, you'll hear people say my ACE score, right? And what that is, your ACE score ranges from 0 to 10. Remember, we were talking about 10 different instances in those categories. So it ranges from 0 to 10, and each category experience accumulates a point. So if we go back to here, so if I had experienced physical, emotional abuse, mental illness in my family, someone had been incarcerated, and substance abuse, someone had experienced that, that would be 5. So I would have an ACE score of 5. It's not necessarily like so. If I were to say that I experienced several instances of physical abuse, that's not like 3 or 4. It's just 1. So it's per
Okay,
category.
good. Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
Yeah, so it's just 1 per category. So to have an ACE score of 5, remember, it's a dose response. And so the more likely it is that some of the behaviors that I'm exhibiting could be harmful and linking to mental health or mental illnesses, physical illnesses, and things like that. Let's go back, sorry. And the last thing is, it's usually determined by taking a questionnaire. And so that's kind of what I was talking about in the beginning. Typically, there are questions that you can find them online. If you go to therapy, which I hope you do.
Yes.
If you go to
recommend that
therapy,
again at the
yes,
end.
we're going to recommend it. If you go to therapy, if you are in any sort of groups, hopefully you have been given a questionnaire, or there are PDFs that you can use. And what it does is it just walks you through those questions where it's asking you about your experiences in each of those categories.
Awesome.
So here's something that I think is important, right? Why do we need to know about ACEs? Why do we need to increase our understanding about what could have happened to us in the past? A lot of times, and especially in spiritual places, religious places, it's sort of like, well, let's just pray about it and move on, right? You're not your past, right? The things that
Oversimplify it.
right?
Yeah.
Really oversimplifying it, and it's important because it helps us understand our own behaviors and to give us grace. So I was reflecting on this as I was coming here today, and I was thinking about, the more that I understand about some of the behaviors, so 25-year-old Michelle, I'm giving 25, 24-year-old Michelle more grace, right? Because I think about, some of the behaviors, some of the decisions that she made, right, was based on responses to trauma.
Oh, come on, man. You can unpack that one right there alone.
And how often do we think about like some of the choices that we make? Oh, that was silly. That I was just irresponsible. I was immature, right? Instead of looking at it like I was making decisions based on what happened to me, right? And so that helps me look at 25-year-old Michelle in a much better light. And that helps
That's good.
the age that I am now, Michelle. I'm not going to say that.
Yes, the 35-year-old.
The 35-year-old Michelle. It helps me now, right? Because some of that has been unpacked. Some of that I've been able to reflect on and to forgive myself for some of those decisions. So it helps us understand our behaviors. I also thought about it in terms of helping us understand others' behaviors, right? I think about our parents I think about the folks who have raised us and the ones who we are raising, right? And all in relationship with. It's important because it gives us the understanding that perhaps some of the decisions and some of the ways in which they are treating me and have treated me comes from their experience of trauma. Yeah.
And that's a modification of the statement. That it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has something to do with what they've dealt with. You know, yeah.
And you know, I think that we're doing a much better job of understanding trauma now, right? And understanding some of the things, you know, just thinking about the way that we used to practice raising kids, and, you know, when it comes to punishment and things like that, we understand the implications a lot better than the generation before us did, and going, you know, from generation back.
So no longer, because last month we talked about healing and the concept of healing 7 generations previous and 7 generations forward. And it kind of dovetailed in the Mental Health Awareness Month. But it also gives us pause now when I think about sayings that we thought were cool in the neighborhood. What was good enough for my mama, my grandmama, was good enough for me. And that's the way we did it in the old school. And we cured. I heard a guy, and I've heard this colloquially speaking, if you're in a barbershop, we used to have ADHD. We used to cure that. The cure was a belt. You know, and it's like, well, but we just didn't know back then.
Exactly.
Yeah. So don't always go to every category thinking that you can fix it with old remedies, especially when we weren't aware of some of what's going on
Right,
here.
absolutely. And thinking about, so what's interesting about ACES is we're talking about the past, but we're actually talking about the present. Right? So the things that happened in the past are manifested right now. Yeah. So why do we need to know about ACEs? It normalizes our coping responses, right? And so thinking about, instead of when I talked about having grace for 25-year-old Michelle, I think about some of the coping responses that she had. And there were times that I would villainize her and really be hard and like, man, you should have known better if it comes to money and some of the decisions that I made, right? And think, not necessarily giving her an excuse, but normalizing it, putting it in a different light. So it normalizes our previous coping responses and the ones that we have now. Right? When you were talking about relationship with money, that's real. Right? When we think about what some of the things that we have experienced in the past when it comes to finances, when it comes to relationships with money, what sort of implications we have right now, right? And that leads to our different relationships that are maybe not be healthy. Yeah. It also leads to the recognition of resilience. And so I think it's important when we think about, we're going to talk about wellness, and I didn't put a slide on resilience for a reason. Oftentimes we discount the pain and the experiences that we have with, well, you're fine now. And I didn't want it to come off that way.
That's good. That's
right?
good, Doc. That's
good.
Good.
It's important to know that what we're trying to do is we're trying to move towards healing. We're trying to move towards wellness. And some of us have more resources to be resilient than others. So the other thing that the study found, when I was talking about the ACES study, is that there were some folks who experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of ACEs, and they did okay. But it wasn't just because they had this special resilience, like this magic thing that other people didn't have. It was also because they had resources that others didn't have, right?
Oh, okay.
And so sometimes our resilience is connected to the resources that we have. So I think about in my family, so some of my relatives, they didn't have some of the resources that I have. our paths were a lot different, right? And where we are right now is a lot different. But that had to do with not because I was this special unicorn, right? I had some different resources than others had, right? And so I think it helps us recognize the resilience in trying to surround ourselves by different resources that help us to have that resilience.
And when you speak about resilience, instantly it took me to a good friend of mine years back. We were talking about this concept of ACEs, and this person was loaded with ACEs, and talking about like everybody in the household went to jail, all this, but then the difference was that they, after graduation, they ended up going to another city and going to college. Right. So this exact same set of circumstances that became a cycle of drugs addiction, behavior that was considered promiscuous with everybody else in the household. Again, his resources and his environment changed. And so that set of, again, it just affirms what you were saying about the access and availability of resources there. Gosh.
That's a great point. And I think it's important to know that those circumstances sometimes help, right? So being removed from certain situations. And I think a future discussion.
Oh, you coming back. We're not going to let this resource go without. Yeah.
A future discussion could involve how to capitalize on the resilience that we have and we didn't know it. And so as I was preparing for this talk, I was reading another article, and a lot of people are focusing on positive childhood experiences because it does balance out sometimes. And so being able to focus on the positive things that have happened is also important. Right. And we know that here in Infinity,
right.
because we manifest the things that we focus on. Right.
And we're intentional about
Yes.
that, especially for our people to the degree that we can, and to young people. We want to make sure that we minimize any negative experiences by focusing on positive experiences.
Yep. And I love minimize. We're at a place. Why else do we need to know about ACEs? Because we can prevent them. Right? We can prevent them. So we're talking about right now, if we're looking at adults, but we're also thinking about our children. Yeah. And so there are things that we can do differently to help to prevent those things so that as they are coming up, the behaviors are not as risky, as unhealthy and harmful to them.
This is great.
Yeah.
And we've already got questions in the chat. And I've got to, because the presentation is phenomenal.
Yeah. So the other reason is it helps us focus on wellness. Therapy is key. Getting into a relationship with a professional that will help you unpack some of this, and to be able to discuss and work through this. Sometimes not just through talk therapy. There are other therapies and other modalities that help somatically, because we know that trauma, our brain, right, is our body, right? And so some of the somatic symptoms that we experience, that can be worked through with a professional as well. So going into what mental wellness is, we think about our emotional well-being, our psychological, and our social well-being. And again, we're talking about going into wellness. So when we think about emotional well-being, that's our perceived life satisfaction, our happiness, our cheerfulness, our peacefulness. And then our psychological well-being, that's the self-acceptance, our personal growth, including open to, new experiences, how optimistic we are. Or do we have hopefulness, right? Do we have a purpose in life? Thinking about the control of our environment, spirituality, self-direction, and positive relationships. So when we think about our psychological well-being, that's really important. It's pretty holistic. Social well-being is our social acceptance, our beliefs in the potential of people and society as a whole, which that part is hard right now, right? When we think about, looking at folks as good people and thinking about all of the things that are happening in society, that's really hard to do. When we think about our personal self-worth and usefulness to society and our sense of community. And so when we think about mental wellness, that is a balance, right? The balance of being emotionally sound and psychologically, and having that social well-being, having all of those things holistically is really important. And so this just goes through some of the dimensions of wellness, right? So it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, environmental, and then financial. And really, I think it's important to think about this, right? As we're talking about the past, that really implies the present and the future. And so if we are aware of where we are on all of these dimensions of wellness, right, and thinking about the coping mechanisms and the coping skills that we have based on the things that have happened to us, we can then balance ourselves so that we're able to be the best versions of ourselves. Yeah. Nope, wrong way. Okay. And so here are some of the resources.
This is great.
There's a PDF in there. And I'm a professor.
You surely are. And that's why we're going to drop these links in the chat right now, so that it's a hot link. So if you're watching the stream, you can just go click on these resources that Dr. Michelle is telling you about.
So the first one is an article. It's probably a pretty long article. That's why I said I'm a professor. But it really does talk about the study that it comes from, talks about some implications, and it goes into more detail with some of the information that I just talked about. There are some resources in the second one that give you some a couple of questionnaires and some other things. It also talks about resilience in that second link. And then the last one is a questionnaire for adults.
Ta-da!
We are there.
Y'all, she's a professor, and truly a professor. And this is why it's important to bring good people in the room like this. I've still got a ton of questions from a spiritual space too as well, which is good. Again, and it's important. I went to a workshop at a mental health and awareness conference just about 2 weeks ago, and one of the workshops was self-care for pastors. And I went in just to kind of have a general overview. There was a ton of different people in there, and this couple who do this mental health initiative out of San Antonio, I think it is, in Texas, and they were making this wonderful presentation about, and they talked about ACES and as it works with spiritual leaders as well, and this concept of self-care, mental health care. And I was in the workshop, and I was like, "Oh, this is fascinating." And then with each progressive slide, I was like, I was vacillating between feeling so seen and saying I need to make sure I take care of myself. So, but it was good, because one of the things they also pointed out is that people who are in high profile positions or leadership positions, whether that's professionally, whether that's spiritually, often they can neglect their own self-care and not look in the mirror and also offer themselves grace along their professional journey for things that they consider mistakes that they made early in career, and not being whole enough to help people. And one of the things that they pointed out, and the reason why I'm transparent about this, is that in traditional church environments, most people, and I can attest to this from conversations behind the scenes with pastoral leadership, many people will not veer into discussing mental health because they're embarrassed to say that they get mental help or they're on a journey themselves as leaders, because we've created this paradigm where the leaders are supposed to be perfect. And so there's a shame there in saying, I needed to take a break, I needed to take care of myself, and here's what I'm doing to my health. So we just kind of act bulletproof And because of that, that's a barrier to actually helping people move forward in mental health spaces. What role does spiritual community play in mental health and well-being, not only environmentally, but emotionally, mentally, for people who are needing to explore mental health awareness? And does it make a difference in that community that they find themselves in? Does it make a difference based on whether they embrace the concept of mental illness or not?
Yeah. So I'll answer your second question. It does.
Okay.
It does because, like you were saying, it serves as a boundary to being able to get the resources that are needed, right? And so if we're not discussing mental health, if we're not discussing some of the implications of trauma, right, then how are we able to make changes? Without awareness, you can't make a change. If you don't know that something needs to change, if you don't know what the resources are in order to make those changes, then how can you make the change, right? And then your first question is, do you remember it?
Yeah. My first question, when we talk about environment, how important is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the environment to help
spiritual,
it. Spiritual
yeah.
community in the larger space of
Yeah.
one of the slides talked about the environment, the energy that you're around all the time.
So it helps to validate and to normalize some of the behaviors that we have exhibited and some of the experiences that we've had, right? So if you know that you're not the only person that may have experienced one of those categories, right? Hopefully, maybe that can give you more hope to say, you know what, look at that person over there. They did it. Let me talk to them and see how they came through it. Not necessarily trauma dumping.
Right.
Not,
Oh, good.
Not necessarily
Oh.
trauma dumping,
Oh,
right?
yes.
And so I think it's important that there's also this acknowledgement of, it's sharing and connecting and supporting one another isn't necessarily trauma bonding. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right. I think that's something else, and it's not helpful and can be kind of triggering for a lot of folks, right? But to be able to collectively support one another, to offer resources, to help in that healing journey, it is really important, right? I've been in spaces a while ago where it was all about praying. You pray,
Yeah.
pray it away, you pray through
Yeah.
it, and God got you, and
Yeah.
you're good.
Yeah.
And yes, you can pray through it and get therapy at the same time.
That's right.
And
That's
right,
right.
it can be both.
Yes, that's right. It's neither.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be either or. It's both and.
It can
right?
be both, right? So I do think it's really important that we're open in a spiritual way, and also when we think about the different. When we think about wellness, the different dimensions of wellness, spirituality is there. So it's important to know that that is actually a positive coping skill, right? That is something that folks who are connected spiritually, they tend to do better emotionally and mentally because that is a foundation that they have, and it helps to ground them.
Oh, this is awesome. Okay, routine. Listen, y'all, we're going to the chat, and I'm going to get through some of these questions we have. I'm going to fire them off. We've got Sister Iris who has said, what are the statistics that reflect the reversal or repair of these issues?
Yeah. I can provide you a resource for the statistics. I don't have the statistics in my brain right now. However, it is important to know that we can not necessarily fix it, but we can heal, right? And so
good.
I have done some somatic work where what we are doing is helping. Okay, so there's like eye movement, rapid desensitization, it's EMDR. And I'm doing this because you follow a person's finger and you're kind of helping to re-experience and you're shifting the way that the brain experiences the trauma. The trauma never goes away. That's important. It doesn't go away. The trauma, the impacts of it can be reversed is a word that's
good.
used, right? But really, it's reprocessed. It's how your brain is reprocessing the trauma. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
And so that is important because it has to be intentional. It doesn't just happen just kind of passively. It's something that you work through. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score, which is a pretty, it's very thick, maybe 300-400 pages.
That's good.
And so what it does, though, it breaks down biologically, right? And when it comes to the neurophysics of it, what's happening biologically in our brain and in our bodies, right? And so that's a good book, a good resource.
Oh, this is great. And I think about this because when we talk about the brain, you know, the brain is an organ, the brain is tissue, it's muscle as well. But we think about, sometimes I like to think about this in a more guttural sense, to say if I don't use my muscles, they will atrophy. Or if I fall down and something hits my thigh and it bruises my thigh, it has traumatized the muscle. There's a process that I can take, that I must take to start healing that. Or if I have a knee injury, I have to start healing that. If not, it will impact me for the rest of my life. So just like there's rehabilitation that you take to an injury that is muscular, you also have to rehab what has happened to your mind, because it definitely, like, physiologically changes your brain. But the good thing is it's not permanent. Or like you said, the coping mechanisms help you reshape and reframe how your brain operates going forward. Oh, that's good.
And how we process it.
How we process it. Oh, how we process it. Okay. So we've got a question. Okay, Renee. Good question. I love y'all. Keep asking these questions. We're going to be out of here soon. But does the degree of the trauma dictate the score, i.e. sexual assault?
No.
Okay.
No, it doesn't dictate the score. There are lots of how can I say this? So it doesn't dictate the score, right? That is one category. What happens is there are lots of variables that dictate the behaviors. So the score is just something that helps us. It's sort of a gauge.
Yeah.
Right. And so there is a video that I used to show, and I think we still show it in our program. It's called Healing Need, and NEEN. And so that's something that's readily available on YouTube. Going back to that content warning, though, there is a lot. But this individual, she had 10 ACEs.
Wow.
10 ACEs.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. And that didn't mean that only 10 things happened to her, right?
Gotcha.
What that means is there were some things that happened to her, in one particular category, something that you couldn't even imagine. But that doesn't mean that she has a score of 30. She just has a score of 10, right? Now, what that also means, though, is that the amount of trauma that she has experienced is so severe that it really did impact her in a way that through some work on her, with resources and just grace that she's been able to kind of walk through and to help other people. That leads me to something else that I didn't talk about. There are different types of trauma. And then there are different degrees, right? So if you think about trauma with a big T, some of you may have heard this before, and trauma with a little t, there's trauma is trauma. Pain is pain. The implications of those things can vary, right? And so trauma with a big T are things that are life altering, the death of someone, like those things. But trauma with a little T is still traumatic, right? The loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, right? And so it doesn't necessarily mean that one is more severe. It's more severe, but it's the impact that we're really thinking about.
Impact.
The
Gotcha.
impact of the trauma.
The impact. Okay, good. Because I'd seen that in terms of there was a great conversation. It was on NPR a while back about trauma and people trying to get into a conversation about comparative trauma, and a lady who was scared of clowns, versus somebody who discovered their cousin's body, but at the same age or near the same age, trauma registers the same in the
It
brain.
does.
So we don't get to look back and say, "Oh, that's just silly. That's a clown."
Exactly.
Versus, "Oh, well, she did this," and it's comparative.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, let's go. Valuable conversation here. Terrell says you mentioned seeing ACEs can have adverse effects. What does this say about the things we encounter on social media and the internet, especially when our littles want devices?
Yeah. Yeah, so when we're thinking about ACEs, those are things that happen to us before the age of 18, right? We are traumatized on a daily.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
That's such a good question. When we were having a conversation on the phone, and I was like, "Hey, we need to make sure that we're careful about what we're talking about and what we're sharing, because at any, who knows where everyone is in their journey, psychologically where they are, and so I think it's important." Because not everyone does content warnings like I did. It used to be considered trigger warnings, right? Not everyone does that. Not everyone thinks, oh, me sharing this or me, helping to educate someone by putting, something that the world needs to know, that they don't necessarily think about the fact that that can harm someone else. So what's important, and one of the things that I do, is I have boundaries. There are things that I will not watch. There are things that I will not listen to.
Good point.
Right?
Good point.
There are things that if I can help it, I don't do, because I know that that can trigger some responses in me that I don't need. Same thing with my children, right? And so I think it is important to be aware and to understand that not everyone understands the implication, nor maybe do they care, of how you can harm someone else with some information and or just sharing your own trauma. Right.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to think about, we have to humanize others, and we have to have empathy that everyone has experienced some pain. Right. And the way that I experience pain might be different than the way that someone else is, but I'm not going to assume that they're okay.
Oh, this is great. Question: how does research underscore external trauma factors as they relate to ACEs and data? For example, discrimination, social media influence, as Brother Tyrell mentioned. So how does it underscore those factors as they relate to ACEs and data?
So I want to make sure I'm understanding the question. So how does research, like the research that we're doing or the research that's out there? I don't know if you could follow
I
up.
would get a little deeper and probably say what I get from this, and Courtney, you can clarify that if you want. But how does it underscore external trauma factors relating to ACEs and data? For instance, say discrimination, social media influence. How do we know? Yeah, that's it. How do we know that what we take in has an influence on our behavior and what happens to us down the line as adults? Like,
So based on the research.
Based on research and stats.
Yeah, there's
Right.
so much.
Yeah, right.
There's so much, and there's a lot of research being done when it comes to different communities as well, right? So I was
Okay.
also thinking about historical trauma. That's one of the things that in my bio you talked about me being interested in. And so we also know that different historical trauma that different communities experience, those have implications that are different than other communities, right? But we know that by not just the research, but also from what we see. We see the different health disparities. We see the different. So even when we think about during COVID, and we know that there are still people getting sick and there are still people dying, right? But in the throes of it in 2020, 2021, who was dying the most?
True.
Who had the higher rate of death when it came to COVID? And it was in the African American community, right? And it's important to think about those health disparities are connected to trauma, historical trauma.
Lack of access to healthcare
healthcare,
resources,
all of those things.
insurance, and levels of insurance based on economic status. All of those things
Yeah.
become external factors
Yeah.
that contribute to everything from trauma to what they would say would be comorbidities.
Absolutely.
You know, so not just hypertension, but hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, lack of access continues for that. And it's like all of those things are stressors. I think about neonatal care and Black women and lack of access there, or thinking that our pain receptors are somehow non-existent sometimes. All of those things are traumatic.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Those are then linked back to trauma. Wow. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're getting deeper in this. This is great because we were just watching an episode of Law and Order where the captain was getting a therapy session and the therapist was asking questions.
Okay.
And we were just talking about.
Were they doing
Yes,
EMDR?
they were doing the EMDR,
Okay.
and we were like, "Wait a minute,
What is that?
And that's when you said that, I immediately went back. So this is stuff that's out in the real world that is happening. Sister Nadia says, "What?" Oh, wait a minute. Okay, we got Jeffy who says, "I've actually got 3 or 4 of them. Everybody is going in. This is great." Can you, Tony, go to the slide on the wellness, because they want to see that. We'll put that up in a second while I'm asking this question. The slide again for wellness, overall wellness. We've got a question. What traumatic experiences are connected to hypervigilance?
So all of them. So it's important to think about the categories. It's all trauma, right? So it's all trauma. And when we think about the trauma, we're looking at the implications of the trauma. And so hypervigilance, so typically you would think about it related to post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay.
And also it's important to think about that link to anxiety, right?
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so when you think about the hypervigilance, that's a lot of that has to do with the fear that is associated with what has happened in the past, what could happen in the future, but really thinking about the loss of the sense of control. Right. And so that's most connected, I think, with PTSD when you hear of post-traumatic stress disorder. Also complex trauma. That's another category that you can think about. But it is definitely related and is actually a symptom when you think about diagnosing post-traumatic stress disorder.
That's great. That's great. All right. Another question. How do you use the ACES score and information to navigate intimate relationships?
So
Can I
think,
add something to that?
Go, please.
Yeah. ACES score and information. Can I add under the guidance of a professional therapist? Okay. I just
Yes.
want to make sure so that we don't say we just go take the test and then start fixing it ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you for that, because I think that it's especially if you're in a couples therapy, and a lot of times we do therapy with individuals so if you're in couples, it's important to do individual therapy as well. right? Because it's the individual that that has to make those changes. Okay, that's just a side note. But read the question again, please.
Yes. The question is, how do you use the ACES score and information to navigate
Yeah.
intimate relationships?
So, thinking about when we think about the impacts of some of the trauma that we may have experienced, right? We think about whether it's sexual, physical, neglect, all of those things. It also, I think, has implications with our attachment, the way that we relate to others. And so, thinking about some of our behaviors, right? Some of the ways in which we trust others or we may push them away. That's attachment. That's a whole other thing, but still related because, again, the higher the ACE score, the more things that you have experienced, the harder it is. And sometimes the more at risk you are for making decisions based on protecting yourself. Because remember, that's the coping,
Yes.
right?
Yes. From unhealed, unresolved trauma.
And
Yeah.
unresolved trauma. So the more likely you are to make those decisions, right? And those come into our intimate relationships, right? And so I think it's important to do the work to understand why you're doing some of the behaviors, why you're exhibiting some of the behaviors. And I think it's important to consider your attachment style. That's that's
yeah.
another
That's another
conversation,
conversation.
for
Which this
another
entire year,
time.
we're going into this. This is
Yeah.
a whole new initiative at Infinity. We're going to have these
Yeah.
conversations.
So it's important to think about that. But I think having grace for yourselves and for the people that you're in a relationship with, but understanding the behaviors. That's really what's important. Understanding the behaviors and getting resources and support to kind of work through them.
It's awesome. Yes, got a question. We're going to bring this question up, and then I've got one from Nadia. Sister Nadia says, "What are the true dangers of sweeping trauma under the rug, and the dangers of reviewing trauma without professional guidance?" So the dangers of under the rug
Yeah.
and the dangers of professional guidance, not having professional guidance.
Yeah, I think the behaviors
good.
can get more intense and can be very harmful without being able to reflect and not. So we talk about unresolved trauma. It doesn't go away. We just experience it in a different way, right? Like the things that we have experienced, it doesn't get erased because you go to therapy. Does that make sense?
Right. It doesn't disappear.
It doesn't
It's a-
disappear,
yeah.
right?
Nor is it healthy to try to make it disappear, right?
Exactly.
It's compartmentalization in an unhealthy way.
Oh,
Okay.
I love that. Because to be able to process it, right, it helps your brain, it helps your body heal in a different way. So you're processing it and you're reprocessing it. And then to do this without support, professional support can be harmful because we can misinterpret what we're doing. We can also overgeneralize what we're seeing, right? And so I think so many people have diagnosed themselves with different things and different umbrellas, and we're not necessarily equipped to do that, or licensed to do that with the education that's needed, right? So when we talk about, like a lot of people say OCD, right? That's anxiety, right? That's an umbrella, but you wouldn't necessarily know that just by looking at TikTok or something like
sure.
that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because you don't
Yeah.
know all of the different symptoms and all of the different behaviors that are associated with that diagnosis. Now, understanding it and having the resources and the support from a therapist, a behavioral specialist, helps you to identify the changes that need to be made as well. So it's not just having the knowledge, it's also having the knowledge about what works for you, right? And what's effective in moving through that healing.
This is great. All right. So if you have any more questions, I got one more round of questions. I'll say put it in the chat. This conversation is fascinating and it's powerful and it's very, very healing. Doc, I appreciate you hanging with us through this. What are the early signs of trauma bonding in relationships?
That's a loaded question.
Oh, I know. You have to preface that without knowing the specifics. Like, see, generally, what are some early signs of trauma bonding in relationships? And maybe define what trauma bonding is for people who may not know what that is.
So, I think there are lots of different definitions, right? And we can interpret it in different ways. The way I look at it is bonding through trauma, right? And through pain. And really, a lot of it has to do with the way that we're attached to someone, like that attachment style, whether it's a healthy attachment or an unhealthy attachment. But a lot of times I think what happens is we kind of latch on to that normalization of the trauma that we've experienced, and we kind of build on it and build a relationship on it, right? And so that early the early signs, I think, is just the sharing, and not only. So there's a difference between sharing and appreciating, but sharing and staying in it, and then kind of accepting the behaviors that come with some of the trauma, and without trying to change it. I would say that's when you see the trauma bonding happening in the relationship, right? Where it's an unhealthy relationship. So if you think about, there's a difference between possessing someone and so a lot of times people think possession equals love, right? And so that unhealthy relationship and to that unhealthy attachment can be something that you feel like, oh, that means that person really loves me. But it could be a sign of abuse.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It can be, and it could be something that you're used to because of your past experiences. That's what love feels like, but it's not. And so if you're both in this kind of situation where you're like, this feels normal, this feels, so we're bonded through this, right? That relationship can then develop into something pretty unhealthy.
Yes. 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 Oh gosh, this is great. And I think about generally, as I get to the last couple of questions here that we have, I think about generally kind of the overarching trauma that is living in America right now, as we are changing into a higher vibrational space and getting rid of some of the old stuff, and the old stuff fighting to stay alive in every kind of ism that you got. But also think about something that happened probably day before yesterday, that unwittingly a lot of children and young people via TikTok, via Instagram, via X were exposed to. And that is this announcement about P. Diddy, right? And I'm not going to advance the video or share the video or anything like this, but this is CNN and everybody's thread, and people like, oh my God, this is it, and everybody's doing this. But seeing him in that hotel room do what he did physically to that sister, I felt traumatized. I had to cleanse my mind after watching it. So I can only imagine what not only that effect is on the general population, but could something like that have a lasting effect on a child who just is sitting in the room with mama or daddy watching TV and seeing that? Could that have an effect, lasting long-term effect to them in terms of exposure?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why it's important for us to have boundaries and to exercise those boundaries in terms of what we allow ourselves to be exposed to and what our kids are exposed to. I think it also lends to a conversation that needs to be had with, so I couldn't not have my child see that. I mean, she saw it on her own,
Okay,
right?
of course,
And so we had a conversation about it. What does that mean to you? Right. What does that look like in terms of self-worth? Like all of those different things. And thinking about, not only are we seeing the video, but we're seeing people's interpretations of it, right? So it's the commentary that comes after.
Oh man. Oh, there's
Right.
tons of it. Yeah.
Everyone's an expert. Everyone, all of
Yes.
that. And so what are some of the commentary that you're seeing? What does that look like? What does that mean to you? right, in your own behaviors. I think about, so I listen to NPR often.
Yeah.
And they're doing a much better job of warning you before you listen to a story, and they say, now warning, just as a heads up, we are going to be talking about things that are, whatever in nature, yada yada yada. And then they go into it. And so just because you have that warning,
Right. Right.
it doesn't mean like
And
it's
sometimes
still bad.
it exacerbates the curiosity.
Exactly.
What is this? Oh,
Then they
this
go
about
into
to be
it.
good.
Right.
Like, right.
And so, this is not necessarily the same thing,
Right.
but what I was talking about in terms of, as a community, maybe we don't share all of the things to everyone, right? Because we don't know how it's going to impact other folk.
Good point. So in general, you should be cautious about the things that you share because it may be triggering for somebody
Yeah,
else.
absolutely. So I think about like, I haven't evolved to Instagram. Maybe that's my age showing a little bit. So I'm a Facebook person. But so when stories come up and I see people and maybe they've gotten hurt and then they take a picture and they show it, I'm like, whoa, like you don't know where everyone is right now. Right? You don't know
True.
what sort of, and so here's the thing. I make a decision. Do I continue to follow that person or not? Because they may not know how it's impacting me. Right? That's
point.
very broad. That's, just an example. I think we have to also be mindful of that as well as we are connecting and supporting others. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's great. I'm also concerned sometimes when videos like that and other traumatic videos will come out and you're around young people and there is just for that specific video with the singer that it happened to who settled that case out of court, but also there was payouts and settlement money and all of that. But to think of the range of a young person who's exposed to that, who may go from when they're exposed to it, apathy, oh, that just happens,
Yeah.
all the way to the other side of, well, at least you got paid, as if that's a good thing.
Yeah. We've been desensitized.
Okay, desensitization.
Yeah.
That's good.
On so many different levels, because there are and we have access to so many different things, right? So we think about social media having a positive impact in terms of, access to information, and a negative impact in terms of access to information, right? So we I think have been desensitized to so many things. We can watch someone expire on a video and just keep moving, because that's reality. And I also think about like our young people, they see violence in their schools, right?
Good point.
And so I think yeah, they tape it and they watch it and then they share it and all of those things. I think that as a society we've become we've become numb. And I'll go back to trauma, right? Like that's one of the things. So someone asked about being hypervigilant when it comes to PTSD. Another response is to become numb. We have become numb to a lot of
Numb is
the
a
pain.
trauma response.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And sometimes, and I have to be mindful to, with myself, being transparent, to make sure that I can navigate what is a higher spiritual vibration. David Hawkins talks about in Power versus Force. There's a higher spiritual vibration, even from a physics space, in neutrality. So neutrality, being able to be balanced enough to not be swayed one way or another, that's actually higher than rage or anger or depression. But I also have to navigate what is neutral and what is numb.
Yeah.
Right? Because neutrality allows you to see the landscape and to be okay. Numbness makes you just ignore everything.
Exactly.
And that's not healthy.
Not at
That's
all.
not healthy. Okay, so good. Real quick one. Traditionally, our elders have lived experience over time, given a lifetime of trauma. How can we younger folk help them bring forth easements in effort to have them have a healthier lifestyle?
That's great. That's a great question. I think I think there are a couple different things, right? The first thing is grace. I I try to give elders, the people who have raised me, grace in thinking about what I know, what I have experienced, right? And how painful that is, and how that probably has impacted the way that I raise my own children, right? And then comparing it to the information that they didn't know and they didn't have, right? It helps me understand that what happened to them also therefore happened to me. So being able to give grace, I think, is probably one of the first steps. The other thing is and having empathy, right? Because if you think about it, we're creatures of habit. And if we're thinking about elders and thinking about things that have been done a certain way, it is really hard to change behaviors. It's really hard to change the way that we think about things, and the way we feel about things. And it's also hard to change behaviors. And so understanding that, helping them understand could what happened to them, or the fact that some behaviors come from things that happened to them, and it's not just something that happened, right? And it's not just the behaviors. Helping them understand it can be a very long road, because it's hard to change those behaviors and the way that we see things, right? That's the way I've always done it. It worked for me. Look at me, I'm fine, right? Or, all of the things that we have heard. And so I think having the understanding, having grace, empathy, and understanding, but being able to maybe say, hey, did you know that some of the things that you talked to me about, that what people are calling that right now, is they're calling it trauma. And I think even relating it to that way, because it always has been. We're just calling it something different now, right?
Right. That's good. That's good. As we close, Doc, and again, I appreciate you for being with us and unpacking this. This has been absolutely beautiful, and I'm going to give you the last word in a second to just kind of give some recommendations for people who are out there, and just tie it up for us. But I want to ask you to speak a little bit about extremity, and going to the extreme as a trauma response. And the example I will give, I will pull something from my own life, because I don't want to ever try to speak in generalities. There was a guy I encountered who was a really good guy, when I was a young single father, and we all felt, my little men's group that were around, we all felt as if we were never, ever doing enough for our kids, because this guy was doing everything. He was pressing the kids' clothes and getting them food and cooking all the meals and going to every single thing and volunteering for all of the teams and just doing all of this. And I was raised in a house with a mom and a dad, thankfully, and I didn't see my dad do all of those things. And so I myself was like, we were all trying to catch up with, because we would be in a peer group and they'd be like, why don't y'all do that like so-and-so? We were like, why don't you? He does everything. He takes his woman's shoes off when she comes in the door and all of that. And we were like, whoa, we were just finding ourselves trying to catch up. After conversation, his father had never been around, and his father's father had never been around. So he, in his mind, was going to do above and beyond. And so I wondered, even now in reflection, how healthy is that, even for the next generation, to go overboard and reset a template for that generation that could possibly make people feel, in the family generations forward, that they're not doing enough because they didn't do as much as their dad did, which may have been a trauma response, looking back.
So some of the things that I hear you talking about is overcompensating, right?
Okay, good.
Overcompensating. And then also, so not only overcompensating, but when you said resetting, trying to kind of redo right? What was done in a different way. I think about the conversation that you and I had about resilience and about the general how we are looking at trauma now with our children, right? When I was saying it can be prevented. Not everything can be prevented in terms of like we are supposed to, in order to have resiliency, we are supposed to, as people, experience disappointments. We are supposed to, right? Like, because
That's good.
without disappointments, without some things that are kind of like trials, we don't necessarily have the yeah, I love that. The tenacity or the know-how and the skills to be able to problem solve, to do some of those things, right?
Yeah.
And so I think
Or to adjust to new
to
circumstances.
adjust, right? You have to you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to have that resiliency. But in order to do that, you got to go through some things.
That's right.
And so I think the risks of overcompensating at a place where our kids don't experience any kind of problems or pain. I think that also, we have to have a sense of balance. There has to be a little bit of figure it out, because we have to have that problem solving, and that's the way that we survive. That's human survival. We have to, right? And so I think about what we should be striving towards is balance, to be able to do less harm, right?
Okay. All right, y'all. Look, say y'all in the chat now. Y'all send some Thanksgivings to Dr. Michelle. Y'all send this energy in. Y'all send this love to her, and join me in thanking her with virtual snaps and claps and high fives for being in this space. I'm going to encourage everybody. Yes, it's coming in. We got to get a thunderous standing ovation track for when we're virtual so you can hear this. But Dr. Michelle, you should know, and all these comments coming in. Thank you, Dr. Stevens, for your knowledge and insight and everything that's coming into the chat here. That is a testament to the work that you have put in the world with your purpose. So I just want to thank you for that. And for sharing that as part of this community in a way that is direct, that is practical, that is real, that is honest, and most importantly, is coming from a spirit of love. That's so important, because we often find, and I'll let you wrap it up, but as you wrap it up, I want to give you an entry point. We find what we perceive to be love sometimes from people who find overcompensation in a quest to fix others first as a way of resolving what happened in their past. And so there's this missing point sometimes we have where we're like, we're not dealing with our own stuff, because we come out think that if we can heal a bunch of other people or affect change in other people, we can get this external gratification that heals things, but it goes unresolved because we won't actually get the healing ourselves. So turn it over to you to say, wrap it up with healing and what you would suggest to people who are listening here to see some successful growth in their life.
I think it takes reflection and radical acceptance. And you may have heard that term, but really understanding who you are, where you are, and trying not to place too much judgment on it, right? It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. That is really hard to get to, though. It takes intentionality, it takes work, it takes reflection, and it also sometimes takes you sitting in the feeling, right? And so like doing self work is work. It is hard, right? That's why it's important to do it with someone who is trained to help you get through it, to be that sounding board, to help you give yourself that grace. That's not easy. That's not the kind of society that we live in, right? And so it's really important, as we're going towards healing, when we're thinking about some of the things that have happened to us. Those things are not us, they happen to us, and being able to kind of go through it and grow through it takes a lot of work. And so I would say Psychology Today is a really good tool. You can shop for a therapist pretty much. You type in what you're looking for, who you're looking for, who you want to work with. Nowadays, when you think about therapy, it's so accessible. That's one of the things that came from the pandemic. A lot of therapists, a lot of practitioners have moved their entire practice virtually. And so that has actually, we've seen increase the accessibility in certain communities, especially those of color and men, because the vulnerability feels a little different. Anyway, that's another conversation. But I would just encourage you to use Psychology Today. There are a couple other, I think I mentioned The Body Keeps the Score. That's a good book. And there's another book that I use in practice. It's called Attached. I can't remember the author's name, but that's something that, yeah. Yes,
Okay,
look
good.
at you.
We'll type those into the chat.
Good book. So, doing some discovery in terms of like reading and researching, and making sure that you're checking who you're reading to, right? Make sure you double check where the information is coming from is really important. But thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. It was great.
Awesome. Y'all, Dr. Michelle Stevens, and we are blessed to have her here and to have had her in this space right now. We'll wrap this up with a bit of a perm, just a little bit of energy to close out service today. We invite you to close your eyes. We invite you to bow your head. We invite you to just breathe a little bit. As we give thanks in this moment, Divine Source, we are so grateful for the lessons that we have learned here from Dr. Michelle Stevens. Most importantly, we're grateful that she has stepped fully into her purpose and her calling. Thank you for the healing teachings and practices that she has advanced in the world. And thank you for the access that we have in 2024 to a new level of technology, to a new level of access, to a new portal of healing for us, that we can balance our spirituality with our mental health. Thank you for gifting us with these resources that were shared today. Thank you for the knowledge and the wisdom that is scientifically based that can help us as we are proclaiming our healing journey. Our healing journey has begun. We are in a space of divine reciprocity, and that means that we put into the universe that which we would receive, and putting into practice our spiritual and mental health practices that will see fruit is the focus of today, and we are grateful for it. We are grateful that we can see into the past and give our past self some grace. We are grateful that we can exercise forgiveness as we reflect on those things, those choices that we made when we were doing the best we can. We are grateful for community in the place right now. We are grateful for the readings, for the research, for the action, for the healing. We are grateful for this moment, and we speak that something was said or shared today that will launch someone on a new level of health, mental awareness, and creativity and love. And we speak and seal these things together as we go forth in this week to do the work that we want to put into the world to make this a better place in our divine purpose. We speak and proclaim these things and know them to be true. Let us all say together, Amen, Amen, Hotep, Shalom, Namaste, Ashe. Y'all, we appreciate y'all joining us today. We're going to sing this song that we sang at the end of Infinity Fellowship, and we love it. We send that energy. We send a shout out to Sister Nisani Taylor, daughter of Tri and Lakeisha, who also graduated high school just recently. She already walked, and she's got a full ride scholarship to Belmont University in nursing. So we're glad to see that energy and feel that energy coming into the place. And so let's sing our song together, and then we'll give the benediction and we'll go. The words will be on the screen. So as all hearts and minds are clear, and we emerge into this place, into a world that awaits our light, as we are able to sing, and as we are at home, wherever space we find ourselves in, we are grateful that when we sing this song, we unite our energies around the globe. And we invite the peace, the love, the joy, the recognition that we are all one family into our consciousness space. We want you to sing this, and then we want you to share this broadcast with somebody. Say, listen, tune in. Here we go. Let's sing. If today's a brighter day, and we are on our way.
We are on our way.
Then we can begin.
Then we can begin
To heal ourselves again.
To heal ourselves again.
Oh, we remember yesterday.
Remember yesterday.
And yet today's the day.
And yet today's the day.
God's reminding me.
God's reminding me
To look at you and see.
To look at you and see.
Family.
Family.
Mm-hmm. Now y'all know the tune. Let's hear it all around the globe.
If today's a brighter day and we are on our way, then we can begin to heal ourselves again. Oh, we remember yesterday, and yet today's the day. God's reminding me to look at you and see family.
Oh, God's reminding me.
God's reminding me to look at you and see family.
God's reminding me.
God's reminding me to look at you and see family.
We speak that the God of your acceptance and understanding, the wisdom and power of the cosmos and the ancestors, rest, rule, rock, and abide with you henceforth, now, and forever. Let us all say together. Amen. Ami. Hotep Shalom. Namaste. As we get on out of here, we remind you next week is Yoga Sunday. We're going to be doing some healing chanting. Tune in with us. It's going to be powerful. As we get out of here, listen in the chat, Infinite Streamers. Jump on somebody with some positivity. Just at whoever's name you see and tell them to have an awesome week. Tell them they're amazing. Tell them they're loved. Do something in this chat to let somebody know they're special before you leave. This is Reverend Jeff. We love you, and that's a fact you cannot change. Peace and power.